As a preacher known for his powerful worship and unwavering faith, Pastor Clarence stands as a global voice of inspiration and transformation to many in the Christian community and beyond. He has dedicated his life to spreading the gospel as the senior pastor of the Full Harvest International Church, empowering people to live fulfilling lives in Christ. This man of astonishing faith unfortunately has fallen into great controversy as of late, and what he has done or has to say is sure to astonish you. Join us as we take a look into these events. Pastor Clarence McLeden's personal life, starting out, appeared to be a dream from the outside, traveling on private jets, owning multiple luxury vehicles, and living in a beautiful mansion. His entire way of life spoke of success and wealth beyond anyone's wildest expectations. This flashiness, to some, would typically be seen as signs of greed, especially as a pastor, but to his congregation, there could be no greater sign of God's favor rather than this. They saw him as a shining example of what a blessed life could be, a man who had received divine rewards for his faith and service. His church was crowded with thousands of eager listeners, as it always is on Sundays. He delivered stirring sermons that were brimming with passion and hope. He was more than just a pastor because of his ability to engage his audience. He became something of a spiritual icon. Unfortunately, this spiritual icon only seemed to get caught up in a series of controversies with his every action, starting with his first marriage. Pastor Clarence's first wife was seen as the biblical definition of subdued devotion behind the scenes, as she stayed by his side all the time, looking composed and encouraging. She was frequently regarded as the family's pillar, running the house while her husband oversaw the church. While she wasn't in the spotlight most of the time, she was his silent companion on his spiritual journey, supporting him through thick and thin. The congregation loved and admired her personality, humility, and steadfast loyalty to her husband and the ministry. To them, there could be no greater power couple, bound together by love and faith and guiding their community with courage and direction. They were untouchable and above reproach, the epitome of a godly partnership. However, as they say, some fruits may look appetizing, but they only conceal the decay within. The decay was eventually revealed when the sudden news of their divorce rocked the church, practically tearing apart both the church and the perfect image built up by the couple. When his wife, Tamara, was asked why the marriage fell apart, she said that he had been desiring to leave the marriage for the past 5 years. She didn't want to leave him, but she eventually succumbed to his proposal when it became clear that it was inevitable. She says he asked her to file for the divorce since a divorce would reflect poorly on him and could harm his ministry. In August that same year, Clarence informed Christian media sources that it was instead Tamara who wanted to leave the marriage, and that's why she was the one to file for divorce. The controversy about the divorce took an even greater turn for the worse when he abruptly married Priscilla Delgado not long after his divorce was finalized. A mere 7 days after the ruling was confirmed, a private ceremony was held in Malibu, California, officiated by Atlanta pastor Earl Polk. This, of course, caused even more criticisms to flood in, but he was dead set in his choice. In fact, he went further by suddenly pulling out his Church of the Harvest International's 10,000-strong members out of Foursquare Gospels group, significantly impacting them. While doing so, he denied claims of infidelity and stated that he left his denomination because he believed Foursquare officials engaged in racial segregation. However, Tamara disputed the allegations that racism was an issue and reason for his actions. According to her, before their marital issues, he was one to tell her everything, and he had never once claimed that Foursquare was racist towards him. According to her, her ex-husband also told her that God had revealed to him the person he should wed. She criticized him, saying, "How could God show you another woman when you already have a wife?" To which he replied, "There were no other relationships." He revealed that he was receiving spiritual guidance from Polk, Bishop Paul Morton, Mark Hanby, Darrell Hines, and Bishop Dennis Leonard, all of whom, aside from Morton, attended the wedding. Tamara claims that God has given her the strength to Tamara claims that God has given her the strength to continue living her life after 16 years of marriage to him. Her personal issues have now given birth to a ministry within her. She now has joint custody of her 3 children with him. She allegedly also is getting what she refers to as fair alimony payments for the ensuing 10 years. She claimed that the alimony she received is appropriate given the seeds she has sown over the past 16 years. The non-profit organization Esther's Way was founded by the Illinois native with the goal of helping troubled women from all walks of life. She intends to provide women with spiritual guidance on overcoming obstacles in life as they pursue ministry in the 21st century at her No One to Touch My Heart conference in Maui, Hawaii. Evie Nelson, a 7-year veteran worship leader for Church of the Harvest, respects her friend's moral character. Nelson informed media sources that she is a real-life illustration of the Titus and Proverbs 31 woman, godly and full of integrity. Tamara claims that despite the recent turn of events, she is not resentful of her failed marriage and that the Lord has compelled her to speak out about it because he wants her to share her story and the current state of the church. She thinks that the body of Christ is being infused with a spirit of deception. According to him, God is seeking men and women who will use his word to impact the world with the gospel of Jesus Christ while exemplifying integrity and truth. As mentioned, Tamara wasn't the only one getting divorced at the same time. Foursquare's attendance was hit badly, and his departure wasn't one so easily shrugged off. Following former Pastor Clarence's public separation from the International Church of the Foursquare Gospel, New Life Christian Center, formerly known as Church of the Harvest International and still officially known as West Adams Foursquare Church, was regaining its footing in Los Angeles. The new pastor, Lamont Leonard, had been in the ministry for 24 years and was regarded as a leader in racial reconciliation and a leading worship leader. The number of Sunday attendees at the church slowly increased to 325 during his tenure. After Clarence got remarried, he started hosting services at the Hollywood Palladium while continuously accusing the leaders of Foursquare of rejecting him. The West Adams Foursquare Church, a historic organization established in 1939, was left in the midst of the crisis with neither a stable congregation nor a pastor. In the middle of the 2000s, Lamont was asked by the leaders of the church to assist in restarting the church. Leonard stated, "I had to begin with a mindset of having zero membership. This was not a takeover of West Adams or Church of the Harvest, the building was all he had." Growing up in Los Angeles, he studied vocal performance with the goal of becoming an opera singer. In order to encourage racial integration, he chose to enter the ministry and at the time had most recently served as pastor of a church in San Jose, California, that amalgamated with another church. Although he continued to lead a ministry called Destiny Shapers that assists churches in becoming more ethnically diverse, Foursquare leaders convinced him to devote the majority of his time to reviving the church that Clarence had left behind. "My ministry is about healing and restoration, and I don't know why they asked me. I know that God was speaking to my wife and me about that." Strangely, he had just declared to his wife and other people that he would never return to Los Angeles unless he was moved by God. He was moved when he observed the community's need for restoration on all fronts, both economic and interpersonal. He was also aware of the West Adams Church's prominence in Foursquare's past. He reasoned that it was wrong for the church to shut down. It had too much history tied to it as it was among the biggest Foursquare churches in the African American community. In July 2000, he accepted the position and conducted the first service. As relationships were established, the first year's theme was loving, acceptance, and forgiveness. In his sermon, he stated, "There are segments of people who remember church from way back when, or Church of the Harvest, and then people who have no recollection of any history until this church becomes family." In the case of Clarence, some people felt mistreated or injured, and although it had been tough, he knew they were making progress. Lamont's diverse staff are made up of whites, blacks, and Hispanics, which reflects the varied neighborhoods in which he lives. In order to better serve the Hispanic community, he invited white students from local colleges to attend Sunday services and even enrolled in private 4.0 Spanish classes. He was already encouraged by the attendance numbers and wanted to build a church from new converts rather than transfer growth. He declared, "I have to say this is God when I look at the numbers. I don't think anyone would want to support Clarence McLedden and the events that took place here in this kind of circumstance. I'm positive I wouldn't. It must be God." According to Ron Williams, the International Church of the Foursquare Gospel's communications officer, Lamont was exceptional with people skills and is an outstanding teacher. However, Tamara McLedden disputes that racism was an issue. She said that before their marital issues, Clarence told her everything, and he never once claimed that Foursquare was racist towards him. While his ex-wife and former church picked up the pieces, you'd wonder what Pastor Clarence got up to. Well, he flamed the controversies higher. In 2013, Oxygen Network released a reality TV program called Preachers of LA, which caused a great deal of controversy both inside and outside of the Christian community. The program showcased the personal lives, ministries, and material wealth of well-known pastors, including Bishop Clarence McLeod. The show received a lot of criticism for its depiction of luxury and its effect on how church leaders are seen, even though the producers claimed its goal was to shed light on the lives of popular pastors. There were a few issues noted by various critics, one of which was how the luxurious lifestyles of these pastors were portrayed. They were often seen driving fancy cars, wearing designer clothes, and living in multi-million-dollar homes. This was especially true for Pastor Clarence, who was pictured traveling with a personal entourage that included support personnel, security, and assistants. This, according to critics, strengthened the negative preconceptions about prosperity gospel leaders who seem to put material wealth ahead of spirituality. In fact, they deemed the show as a means to advocate the gospel of prosperity and wealth to many viewers, pushing the ideology that material wealth and financial success are the results of being faithful to God. This emphasis, according to the more traditional theologists, was a distortion of Christian teachings which place a strong emphasis on service, humility, and selflessness. Leaders from different denominations said that the series shifted focus from ministry work to personal gain and chastised the participants for showing off their wealth. Because it portrayed pastors as self-serving rather than selfless, some churchgoers were worried that the show would deter people from going to church. Bishop Clarence McLeod reportedly reconsidered his involvement in the series after major backlash from many critics in and out of the Christian community. In an online video message, he clarified that the show differed from what he initially agreed to. Initially, when he was presented with it, they claimed it was a documentary series rather than a reality show. He once more stated that he had nothing to do with the project's creation. He further clarified that he had a lot of things come to him like this, a lot of people with certain opportunities came to him, and he turned them down. The seasoned preacher claimed to have known the show's producers. Prior to working with Relieve Entertainment, Plummer Media believed that their personal relationship with God would determine how they approached the show's development. He thought the producers and other individuals involved were Christians, people he knew, people filled with the Holy Spirit, and they truly wanted to make a big impact in Hollywood. Unfortunately, as he would later find out, decisions are made at the network level, and occasionally, details are lost in translation. He went on to say at first, he thought and trusted that they could do something with this in relation to some things that the Lord had said to him. Since he was 15 years old, he had preached, and he said he never intended to become famous for it. He iterated that as someone with a love for his privacy, fame wasn't something he was after. On the show, Dietrich Haddon, a recording artist and former pastor, and Clarence got into a heated argument about whether or not preachers ought to have entourages and ask for honoraria. Following their disagreement, Clarence got up and left the 4-0 house where the different pastors were gathered. In a statement he released in relation to the perception and reaction to the argument, he said he realized that he was set up to be in the crossfire, and when things got heated, he realized that he was getting into what the Bible refers to as an ignorant and foolish dispute. He declared that he would not permit anyone to misuse or defame that for the purpose of television. According to him, the Bible, 2 Timothy verse 2, chapters 23, instructs the man of God to refrain from foolish and ignorant arguments since they cause conflict. He insisted that he wasn't supposed to be there in the first place and that he was set up in that debate scene with Dietrich. He claims that after he landed at the airport, the producers sent a car to take him to a man cave where all of the ministers were shooting. He arrived at the house with his son, assistant, and the driver the producers allegedly put in charge of him, giving the impression that he only rolls with a group of people. Dietrich used this to support his claim that modern pastors behave badly in both their personal and professional lives. He was adamant that the gospel, or the word, be given away for free. Clarence retorted that his team decides on the final choice out of the 200 to 300 requests he receives annually, rather than charging a set honorarium. He confirmed, "We've never turned anyone away from this ministry because they couldn't afford my team. According to reliable sources, Dietrich's booking agent, Faith Management, revealed that his current rate was between $15,000 and $25,000 at the time, even though he advocated for the gospel at no cost. While Pastor Clarence defended himself for his participation in the reality TV show, it did nothing to completely silence the murmurs, as it just looked like him trying to look good after heavy backlash. For some time, he was out of the media for negative PR until recently. Contention arose between both pastors during the 2024 United States electoral period when Bishop Clarence voiced his lack of support for the then-candidate Kamala Harris due to her proposed ideology. He went further to say that preachers who supported her were carrying out false missions which were clearly against the teaching of the Bible. In response to this, Bishops Morton and a few others condemned him for his statements as insulting. This spat between them surprised many in the Christian community, as Virginia's African American Christians are well acquainted with Bishop Paul S. Morton and Bishop Clarence McLedden. Both men have given sermons in churches in Virginia and visited Roanoke in 2004 to officiate at a local Full Gospel bishop's funeral. Morton was at one point his employer when he founded the Full Gospel Baptist Church Fellowship, of which Clarence was the third-ranking bishop in the 1990s and early 2000s. Following Bishop Morton's retirement, he also departed the fellowship, and Joseph Walker III was appointed as the new presiding bishop. With such a close relationship, it was no wonder many felt uncomfortable with the ongoing issues. In fact, after Bishop Clarence responded back during a sermon in what some people interpret as a threat, even more believers were alarmed. According to Dietrich Haddon, who was interviewed by former pastor Larry Reed, Clarence was a conceited man. Larry said that Clarence's argument with Morton and his disrespect for Morton were not good looks. Later, Bishop Morton spoke with Larry about the matter, stating that he was fine and that everyone should check on him. Morton was quiet and reserved, in contrast to Clarence, who was boisterous and full of accusations. The majority of people who commented on Larry's show thought it was immature of church leaders they had admired to act in this manner. While many meanings were drawn from Clarence's speech both against Kamala and the preachers that supported her, the electoral results showed that she didn't end up winning the election. Some were elated, while some were not, but one thing is obvious about Bishop Clarence McLedden: he is a man who isn't afraid of controversies as long as he feels it's his interpretation of God's direction. What do you think of Bishop Clarence's way of life and stance towards Christianity? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. To enjoy more exciting videos, click play on the video on your screen. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you get notified when a new video drops. 40